Picture this. Cold rain has turned the earth into mud. Smoke crawls low across the fields. Iron will sink into the ground. Blood darkens the grass. And somewhere beyond the gray morning, drums begin to speak. You are not watching Waterloo from a map. You are standing inside it, beside an unnamed French soldier who still believes the emperor can bend history one last time. This is Gilded Shadow Record, and you probably know the famous version of this battle. Napoleon returned, Europe gathered, Wellington stood, Prussia arrived, and the dream ended. But you may know who won without knowing what it felt like to survive the day when an empire died in front of ordinary men. This story opens 30 hidden doors, and behind them waits one question: how can a ruler who once terrified Europe lose everything before sunset? At dawn, the battlefield does not look like the end of an age. It looks like soaked farmland. The fields south of Waterloo are heavy with rain from the night before, and every step pulls at boots like the earth itself is trying to hold men in place. You hear horses snoring, wheels creaking, officers shouting through wet air. The soldier near you wipes rain from his face and looks toward the ridge where the enemy waits. He does not see destiny. He sees mud. That mud matters more than glory. Napoleon's army is powerful, but artillery needs ground that can carry guns and cannonballs that can bounce. Wet earth swallows both. The emperor, who once moved with terrifying speed across Europe, is now slowed by weather. The irony is quiet and cruel. The man who spent years making nations tremble must wait for a field to dry. You feel the waiting before you understand it. Men who expected movement stand in uncertain lines. Muskets grow damp. Stomachs tighten. Rumors pass from mouth to mouth faster than orders. Some say Wellington is trapped. Some say the Prussians are far away. Some say this will be over before night. Every army carries hope into battle, because without hope, no one walks forward. Across the field, Wellington's army holds a ridge, using the land like a shield. From where you stand, the enemy seems almost to calm, partly hidden beyond the slope. On the map, it looks clean. On the ground, it is chaos waiting to happen. The French soldier cannot see every British, Dutch, Belgian, German, and Allied formation. He only sees smoke, flags, and the terrible emptiness between armies. Napoleon watches from behind his lines, no longer the young general of Italy, no longer the unstoppable master of Austerlitz, but still Napoleon. His presence bends men's thoughts. To many in the French ranks, he is not simply a commander, he is memory itself. Victories, promotions, songs, medals, old wounds, dead friends. All of it marches under his shadow. If he says the world can be won again, some men still believe him. But beneath this belief, something darker begins to move. Napoleon's return from exile has forced Europe into a final answer. This battle is not just France against an army on a ridge. It is France against a continent that has decided the emperor must not rise again. The soldier beside you does not think in treaties and coalitions. He thinks of survival, yet the weight of Europe presses on his shoulders all the same. The first great pressure falls on Hougoumont, a farmhouse and walled complex on the French left. What looks like a small position becomes a furnace. French troops attack, smoke pours around walls, musket fire cracks from loopholes, and the fight becomes a brutal contest for gates, courtyards, trees, and stone. The soldier hears the roar from a distance and begins to understand that this battle will not break easily. Hougoumont becomes a trap of attention. French attacks draw more men in effort than expected, while Wellington holds the place as an anchor. The order sounds simple: take the position. The battlefield makes it impossible. Stone walls turn courage into casualties. Smoke hides failure. Men push forward because men behind them are still pushing. A small place begins eating a large part of the day. Then the center trembles. French guns open with thunder, and the ridge disappears behind smoke. The soldier feels the earth jump under each shot. Cannon fire is not just sound. It enters the ribs. It makes breath shorter. It turns waiting into punishment. Somewhere ahead, men fall without ever seeing the faces that killed them. War becomes distance, mathematics, and terror. You might think battle is made of clear decisions, but inside it, information breaks apart. Officers ride through smoke carrying fragments of truth. One report says the enemy is weakening. Another says the line still holds. Another warns of movement in the east. The soldier hears only pieces. He knows less than history will later pretend everyone knew. What happens next changes the shape of the field. The French attack La Haye Sainte, a farmhouse near the center, held by German troops of the King's German Legion. It stands close to Wellington's line like a locked door before a larger room. If it falls, French pressure can reach deeper into the Allied center. If it holds, the ridge remains harder to break. The fight around La Haye Sainte is close, desperate, and practical. Ammunition matters. Doors matter. Walls matter. Men who have never met each other kill and die over a farmyard because geography has chosen this place to become important. The soldier watches smoke rise from the center and senses, without fully knowing why, that the day is narrowing into a few brutal points on the field. Then comes the cavalry. Marshal Ney, seeing movement on the Allied ridge, believes the enemy may be retreating or weakening. French cavalry surges forward in waves, breastplates flashing, sabers lifted, horses pounding through smoke. For a moment, it looks magnificent. It looks like old Europe breaking under French steel. The soldier feels hope flare in his chest. Yet the next truth is even stranger. The Allied infantry forms squares, bristling with bayonets, and the cavalry cannot break them. Horses will not willingly throw themselves onto walls of steel. Riders circle, charge, recoil, and charge again. Guns are taken and abandoned because there is not enough infantry support to hold them. What looks heroic becomes exhaustion. What looks unstoppable becomes repetition. This is where the famous version starts to break. Ney's cavalry charges are not simply madness, and not simply bravery. They are confusion under pressure. Smoke, distance, wounded pride, and incomplete information turn judgment fragile. The soldier sees the cost, but not the full reason. He only sees horses falling, riders shouting, squares standing, and the hope of breakthrough dissolving into churned mud. If this story is pulling you deeper into the smoke behind the legend, leave a like as a quiet mark on the battlefield, because from here, the day grows darker, and the empire begins to feel the shape of its own ending. Around the middle of the battle, Gilded Shadow Record asks you to look east. There, beyond the main struggle, another force is approaching. The Prussians under Bellechair are moving toward the field despite earlier defeat at Ligny. Their arrival is not instant, and their path is difficult, but their presence changes everything. Napoleon is no longer fighting one army. Time itself is turning against him. The French must now divide attention. Some forces move to hold the Prussians back near Plancenoit, a village that becomes another burning center of the battle. The soldier may not see the entire eastern fight, but he hears the difference in the guns. A battlefield has a language. New cannon fire from a new direction means the day has become more dangerous than promised. Plancenoit becomes a second battlefield inside the first. Streets, houses, and gardens become killing spaces. French troops fight to delay the Prussians, and at times, the Imperial Guard is sent to restore the situation. The Guard is Napoleon's final symbol of control, the army within the army, men whose presence says the emperor still has an answer. But even symbols can bleed. Back at the center, Haye Sainte finally falls to the French after fierce resistance. For a brief moment, it seems the door has opened. French guns can move closer. Wellington's line is under terrible pressure. The soldier hears the news like a spark in dry straw. Maybe this is it. Maybe the ridge will finally crack. Maybe the old magic has returned. But the battlefield gives and takes in the same breath. The fall of La Haye Sainte comes late, and the Prussians are already pressing harder. The chance exists, but it is surrounded by closing walls. A victory in one place no longer guarantees victory everywhere. The French soldier feels hope again, but this time it arrives with dread attached. Then comes the final decision. Napoleon sends the Imperial Guard forward against Wellington's line. These are the men whose reputation has survived years of war. The force many believe does not fail. When they advance, the field seems to hold its breath. The soldier watches them move through smoke and fire, and for a moment, the entire army leans emotionally into their march. The Guard climbs toward the ridge, but the ridge is not empty. Allied troops rise from cover. Fire erupts at close range. Smoke swallows formations. The attack slows, then strains, then breaks. Different accounts of the exact moments vary, as battlefield memory often does, but the result is clear. The Guard does not deliver the miracle. For the French army, that truth is almost impossible to accept. The word spread faster than command can control. The Guard recoils. The Guard is beaten. Panic does not need accuracy to be powerful. It only needs belief. The soldier hears shouting behind him, sees men turning, sees officers trying to hold lines that have lost their center of faith. An army can survive losses. It struggles to survive the death of its own myth. By the time anyone understands the mistake, history has already moved. Wellington orders a general advance. The Allied line comes forward. The Prussians push from the east. The French army, pressed from multiple directions and emptied by hours of failed attacks, begins to unravel. The soldier no longer thinks of empire. He thinks of the next breath, the next step, the next gap in the chaos. Retreat becomes collapse. Roads clog, wagons jam, horses scream. Men throw away equipment to move faster. Darkness approaches, and with it the full knowledge that the day is lost. The soldier who woke beneath Napoleon's dream now runs through the wreckage of it. In the morning, the emperor still imagined power returning to his hands. By night, the army is broken. Napoleon himself leaves the field, not as the master of Europe, but as a man overtaken by the consequences of time, enemies, weather, decisions, and exhausted belief. The image is not satisfying in the simple way legends want it to be. It is smaller, sadder, and more human. Greatness does not vanish in one instant. It is stripped away by events until the world stops obeying it. Near the end, Gilded Shadow Record returns to the unnamed soldier, because history often remembers emperors and forgets the men who carried their last hopes. He may survive the night. He may not. If he lives, he carries Waterloo not as a date, but as sound. Guns in wet air, hooves in mud. A rumor that became panic. The impossible sight of the Guard falling back. Waterloo changes more than a battlefield. It ends Napoleon's final attempt to return to power and leads to his second exile, this time far from Europe. It strengthens the settlement made by the victorious powers and helps shape a century in which European states tried, however imperfectly, to contain revolutionary war and imperial ambition through balance, congresses, alliances, and memory. But the battle also changes the meaning of Napoleon himself. Before Waterloo, he is still a possibility. After Waterloo, he becomes a legend trapped in the past. Supporters can mourn him, enemies can study him, soldiers can tell stories of him, but the future no longer belongs to him. The crown does not fall loudly, it sinks into mud. The deeper you look, the less simple the battle becomes. Waterloo is not only a story of Wellington's steadiness, Belcher's arrival, Ney's charges, or Napoleon's final gamble. It is the story of a battlefield where weather, timing, terrain, morale, exhaustion, command judgment, and human fear converged. No single factor alone explains the day. Together, they closed like a fist. And this is why the battle still holds power. It reminds you that history can turn on things that feel almost too ordinary. Rain in the night, a delayed attack, a farmhouse that refuses to fall, a message misunderstood, an ally arriving before sunset, a myth breaking at the exact moment men need it most. Empires often look eternal from a distance. Up close, they depend on fragile hours. So when you hear Waterloo, do not picture only Napoleon on a horse, or lines on a map, or a clean sentence in a textbook. Picture mud swallowing wheels. Picture smoke hiding the ridge. Picture a young soldier watching the Imperial Guard move forward and believing, for one last minute, that the world might still change back. Then picture that belief breaking. The final weight of Waterloo is not simply that Napoleon lost. It is that thousands of ordinary men were pulled into the final argument of one man's dream and a continent's fear. Some died for an empire already fading. Some survived into a world redrawn by their suffering. And across the wet fields of Belgium, the past still echoes today because every age has its Waterloo. The moment when power discovers that legend cannot save it from the ground beneath its feet.